The human boy ran through the dense alien forest, his body covered in sweat and blood, his heart beating fast, every step filled with pain, yet determination. He had found a wounded alien girl among the fallen trees, her small body shivering with fear and injury. The moment he saw her, he knew he could not leave. She looked at him with wide eyes that held both terror and hope. He lifted her carefully into his arms, her weight light, yet heavy with the burden of life and fear around them. The forest seemed alive with whispers and movements from unseen creatures. His ears caught the distant growl of a predator, and he knew he had to move faster. Branches scraped against his skin, and leaves clung to his hair, his breath ragged, his arms aching. Yet he did not slow down. The alien girl murmured softly his name. Though he could not understand the words, he understood the meaning and held her tighter. Through the dark, twisting path that led deeper into the forest, the sounds of the beast grew louder. Behind them, a heavy roar echoing through the trees, shaking the ground. His legs burned with pain, but he forced himself to run. The moonlight filtered through the thick canopy, casting bright patches across the path. Suddenly, a shadow moved in front of them. The beast leapt with terrifying speed, its claws reaching for them. He twisted and dodged, using the fallen trees as cover. The girl gasped and clung to him as he swung a thick branch at the creature, hissed, and retreated for a moment, giving him a chance to move forward. His mind raced, thinking of the safest place to take her. He knew the camp was close, yet the path was full of danger, every step a gamble between life and death. The forest floor slick with moss and wet leaves made his footing uncertain, yet he pushed through the fear. The boy shouted at the beast, trying to scare it away, his voice echoing through the trees. The alien girl's small hand clutched at his shirt, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. He looked down and smiled, though his teeth were clenched in pain and exhaustion. He whispered that they would be safe soon, though the forest seemed endless and full of dangers. The sound of rushing water led him toward a small stream that glowed faintly with bioluminescent algae. He placed her down gently, letting her sit while he kept watch. The beast prowled nearby, its eyes glowing with hunger and rage. The boy's muscles ached, yet he stood firm, ready to defend her at all costs. Branches snapped behind him, a warning, and he turned to face the shadow, his arm raised in defense. The beast's eyes locked on him, and for a moment everything froze, the air thick with tension. Then it lunged. The boy rolled aside, narrowly escaping the deadly bite. He reached for a sharp rock nearby, throwing it at the creature, hissed, and backed away. The girl watched wide-eyed, her hand pressed to her mouth as she saw his courage. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them. The wind whispered through the leaves, and the glow from the algae made the scene surreal, like a painting alive with motion and danger. Hours passed, though he could not count them. The boy guided her through twisted roots and fallen trees, over rocks slick with moss. He supported her when she stumbled and lifted her when the ground became too rough. The sounds of the beast faded slightly as they reached a clearing filled with strange glowing plants and tall, crystalline structures. The colors were bright and vivid, lighting the night with unnatural beauty. He set the girl down carefully, her head resting against his shoulder. She looked at him with gratitude and fear mixed together. From the clearing, the camp was visible a few hundred meters away, lights flickering and alien figures moving among the fires. The boy's heart lifted, yet he knew the final challenge awaited. The path to the camp was open, but the forest was still full of dangers. He stood tall, protecting her body in front of hers, every muscle ready to react. The alien girl murmured again, trying to speak, but her voice weak. He nodded, telling her silently that they would make it together. The air around them pulsed with energy, the wind carrying scents of moss and fire, and the distant roar of the beast that had followed them. The first steps toward the camp were cautious, his eyes scanning every shadow. The forest seemed alive, each sound amplified, and every movement a possible threat. The girl's hand held his as they moved slowly, yet steadily. The path narrowed between giant tree roots and glowing flowers that bent slightly, as if watching them move. The boy whispered to her to stay close, his words calm despite the fear inside him, his body tense, ready for sudden attack. The beast's roar came, again shaking the leaves and the ground under their feet. He turned slightly, keeping it in sight, ready to face it once more. The lights of the camp grew closer, his hope rising. But he did not relax his mind sharp and aware. He guided her through a gap between large stones and low-hanging branches that had claimed the path many times before he ducked, and led her through the narrow space, using his body to shield her from sharp edges and possible attacks from hidden predators. The girl's small body pressed against his side, her eyes wide with fear, yet trusting completely the bond between them, unspoken and strong. The forest around them seemed to part in response to their courage. Finally, they reached the edge of the camp. The boy lifted her gently over a small barrier and stepped in himself, hands raised in peace. The aliens around froze, their eyes wide with shock at the sight of a human carrying one of their own and standing defiant despite the blood and scratches covering him. He looked around for danger, keeping the girl behind him. The alien chief appeared at the center of the camp, tall and commanding, his presence strong and unyielding. His eyes locked on the boy. He could feel the judgment weighing on him, yet he stood firm, ready to face whatever decision the chief would make. The alien girl looked up at him, her eyes shining with hope and gratitude, and he knew that the trial was far from over yet. He had done the hardest part and saved her life. Heavy silence fell over the alien camp as the figure of the alien chief slowly emerged from the shadows, his tall frame covered in glowing tribal marks that shimmered like fire under the strange sky. His eyes burned with a cold light, and every alien warrior bowed their heads. As he stepped forward, the human boy felt the weight of that gaze pressing on his chest, yet he stood still, refusing to step back. The wounded alien girl clung to his side, weak and trembling, her voice a whisper of fear and trust mixed together as she held on to him for strength. The chief raised his arm, and the air around seemed to tighten, as though the entire forest itself was holding its breath. The warriors spread in a circle surrounding the boy and the girl, their sharp weapons glinting in the strange light. The human knew this was no ordinary leader. This was a ruler who carried the power of judgment, and in this moment his decision could decide if the boy lived or died. The chief spoke in a deep, rumbling voice filled with both authority and anger, asking why a human would risk his life for an alien girl when her people had once hunted his kind. The boy opened his mouth to answer, but his throat felt dry, his heart raced, yet his eyes did not look away. He finally said he could not watch anyone suffer, not a beast, not a stranger, not even an enemy. If saving her meant angering the tribe, then so be it. His words echoed in the silent camp, and for a moment no one moved. Then a ripple of whispers passed through the warriors, some angry, some confused, others uncertain. The girl raised her head and begged the chief to spare him, telling how he fought the beast alone and saved her life, how he stood against claws and teeth with nothing but his courage. The chief listened, but his face showed no mercy. Instead, he lifted his weapon, a great blade that shimmered with energy as if it carried the weight of storms. The boy knew what this meant. He was being tested, and his life balanced on the thin edge of that blade. The chief asked again, why should a human be allowed to stand in their sacred grounds? Why should he not pay the price of crossing into their world? The boy breathed deeply and told the truth. He said he did not care for old wars or hatred. He saw only someone in danger, and he chose to fight to protect her. His voice grew stronger as he spoke, and for the first time a flicker of respect crossed the eyes of the warriors, though they still waited for their chief's word. The chief lowered the blade, but only slightly. His silence stretched heavy and endless. Finally, he declared that if the boy wished to stand among them, he must prove his strength not with words, but with survival. He pointed toward the dark forest beyond the camp, where the ground seemed to shift and growl. The trial was set. The boy would face the sacred beasts of the tribe, and if he lived, he would earn the right to breathe among them. If he failed, he would become nothing more than food for the forest. The girl cried out, begging her chief to reconsider, but his decision was final. His voice cut like thunder and silenced all protests. The warriors stepped back, forming a path leading to the forest gates. The boy stood frozen for a moment, doubt filling his mind, but he felt the girl's hand on his arm, her eyes wide with fear, yet also with hope. She whispered that he had already saved her once, and perhaps he could do it again. The boy nodded slowly, though fear clawed at his chest. He walked forward, each step heavy with the weight of the unknown. The forest loomed dark, and endless strange shapes moved between the shadows. Eyes glowed, and the sound of growls echoed through the trees. The moment he crossed the line of the camp, the forest seemed to awaken, every sound sharper, every breath heavier. The warriors watched in silence, their eyes cold. Yet curious, the chief folded his arms, his face a mask of authority, as he waited to see if the human had the will to survive. Inside the boy's mind, memories of his past struggles returned. Every moment he had stood alone against pain and fear, every step he had taken to keep moving forward. He clung to those memories now as he walked deeper into the dark unknown. The girl knelt at the edge of the camp, tears falling as she prayed silently for his return, her heart twisting between hope and despair. The chief's eyes glanced at her, but gave nothing away. He simply watched as the human disappeared into the shadows of the forest. The trial had begun, and the silence of the camp grew heavier with every passing moment. The boy did not know what awaited him inside, but he promised himself that no matter the cost, he would not fall without a fight, and he would not let fear decide his fate. And so, with only courage as his shield and determination as his weapon, the human boy stepped into the heart of the trial, while the alien chief stood still as stone, ready to pass his deadly judgment. The night was heavy with smoke and fear as the human boy was dragged across the alien ground, his arms tied behind his back with ropes made from strange fibers that burned against his skin. He staggered with each pull, yet he did not fall. The guards pushed him forward through a path lined with glowing stones that lit the way in a strange green light. The villagers gathered around, tall figures with dark skin marked with lines that shimmered like silver in the firelight. Their eyes followed the boy with cold silence. Whispers rose among them, voices sharp and quick in a tongue he could not understand, yet the meaning was clear. He was an outsider, a danger, a stranger who did not belong. The alien girl who had been saved now lay on a platform above the crowd, her wounds wrapped in leaves that gave off faint steam, her eyes half open, watching him, her lips moving as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came. The boy saw her, and his heart found strength, though his body was weak. The guards pushed him into the center of the village, a wide circle of stone, where fires burned at the edges, sparks rising into the night. The alien chief stepped forward, tall, broad shoulders, scarred from battles long past. His face was carved with lines of authority, his eyes sharp like blades. He carried a staff of bone, with a blade of crystal at its head, and when he raised it, the crowd grew silent. The chief's voice was deep and heavy, his words rolling through the village like thunder. The boy did not understand, yet the meaning came to him through tone and gesture. The chief asked why a human had dared to touch his daughter, why he had fought the sacred beast, why he had crossed into the forbidden ground. The boy's chest burned from pain, but his voice came out steady. He said only what was true. He said he saw someone in need. He saw a girl who was wounded, and he could not turn away. His words were simple, but carried with weight. He said, because she needed me. The crowd shifted, some murmured in anger, some in confusion, some in quiet awe. The alien girl's hand moved slightly, as if reaching for him, but the guards held her back. The chief narrowed his eyes, his grip on the staff tightening. He spoke again, his tone darker. The boy felt the weight of judgment pressing on him. The chief raised his hand, and the guards pushed the boy to his knees. The fire's light flickered across his face. Sweat ran down his brow. The ropes cut deeper into his skin. The boy looked up, not with pride, but with calm, his eyes meeting the chief's without fear. He whispered again, because she needed me. The words hung in the air, heavy and unbroken. The chief turned to his people, his voice rising like a storm. He spoke of law and tradition. He spoke of the danger of outsiders. He spoke of honor and the bond between his people and the beasts that roamed the wilds. He said the boy had broken these bonds. He said no human had the right to interfere, no matter the reason. The crowd roared in agreement, yet some voices stayed silent, their eyes drawn to the wounded girl, their thoughts shaken by the courage of the human boy who had faced the beast with nothing but his bare hands. The chief raised his staff high, and the fire leapt higher, the air thick with smoke and heat. His voice thundered. The boy would face judgment. He would not be killed swiftly, no, the chief declared. He would be tested. He would prove his worth, or he would die before them all. The crowd erupted, half with cheers, half with unease. The guards pulled the boy to his feet, dragging him toward the far side of the circle, where stone steps led down into a cavern glowing faintly with red light. The smell of ash and burning filled the air. The boy's legs shook, yet he did not resist. He walked forward as if each step was his choice, not theirs. The alien girl called out, at last her voice weak, yet strong enough to pierce the noise. She cried for mercy, her words breaking against the night. The chief froze for a breath, his eyes flicking to her, then hardening. Once again his staff struck the ground, and sparks flew. The trial would continue. The boy was thrown into a chamber deep beneath the village walls, carved from black stone. The heat pressed against him, and the glow of fire painted the shadows. The guards tied him to a post and left him there alone, yet not truly alone, for he could hear the growl of something deeper within the dark, the same beast or another of its kind waiting. He leaned against the post, his arms heavy, his mind spinning with pain, yet his heart did not break. He thought of the girl above, weak yet alive. Because of him, he thought of the chief's eyes filled with fury, yet hiding something else, a test, not only of strength but of spirit. The hours passed, though he could not count them. The fire burned low and high, the growl in the shadows moving closer, then fading, then closer again. The boy closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slow, listening to the world around him, listening to the whispers of the tribe. Above the ground, the footsteps of guards, the voice of the chief, the faint cry of the girl who still fought to speak his name. When the guards returned, they untied him, their hands rough, but not cruel. They dragged him once more into the circle of fire. The crowd gathered again, louder than before. The chief raised his staff and pointed at the boy, his voice echoing against the stones. He declared the trial would begin at dawn. The boy would face the beast again, but not in shadow, not in hiding. He would face it before the eyes of the entire tribe, with no weapon, no armor, nothing but his will. The boy stood in the firelight, his body shaking, but his eyes steady. He met the chief's gaze and did not turn away. The crowd fell into silence, waiting for what would come next. The chief lowered his staff, and the fires roared higher, as if the flames themselves carried his judgment. The night stretched long. The boy was taken to a small cage at the edge of the village, where he sat in darkness, his wounds burning, his mind heavy with thoughts. Yet through it all he held to one truth. He had saved the girl, he had done what was right, and he would face whatever came, not for glory, not for reward, but because he could not live any other way. And as the first light of dawn touched the alien sky, the drums of the tribe began to beat slow and heavy, the ground shaking with their rhythm. The guards opened the cage and pulled the boy into the light. The trial of fire and beast awaited, and his fate hung in the balance. The first light of dawn spread across the alien sky, painting the clouds with red and gold, while the sound of drums filled the air, each beat slow and heavy, shaking the ground under the feet of the gathered tribe. The human boy was dragged into the center of the circle of fire, his body weak from wounds, yet his eyes still bright with unbroken spirit. The guards pushed him forward, and the crowd roared, some with anger, some with hunger for blood, and some with silence filled with doubt and thought. The alien chief stood tall above them, all his staff raised high, the blade of crystal glowing in the morning light. His voice rolled like thunder across the circle, declaring that the trial of fire and beast would now begin, declaring that the human would either prove his worth or fall in front of them, and his body would be given to the flames and to the earth. The boy looked around the circle, the fires rising high, smoke swirling into the air, the faces of the villagers staring at him with cold eyes and hot breath. He felt the ropes burn his wrists as they were cut loose by the guards, leaving his skin raw and red, but giving his hands freedom. At last, though no weapon was placed in them, he would face the beast with nothing but his own strength and mind. The chief lowered his staff, and the ground trembled as gates at the far end of the circle opened with a grinding sound. From the dark beyond came the heavy steps of the beast, its body massive, its hide thick and scaled like stone, its jaws filled with teeth sharp as blades, its eyes glowing with hunger and rage. The same creature that had marked the boy with its bite before now stepped forward, ready to finish what had begun. The crowd cried out, some with cheers, some with chants of death. The girl watched from above, her body still weak, yet her voice trying to rise, though drowned by the noise, her eyes wide with fear and hope mixed together. She reached out her hand, though no one looked her way, her heart torn as the boy faced the monster again. The beast roared, shaking the stones and sending sparks into the sky, its breath hot and foul, its tail whipping against the ground. The boy staggered back, but did not flee. He planted his feet in the dust, his fists clenched, his chest burning, yet his spirit unbroken. He whispered to himself, though no one could hear, that he had faced it once, and he would face it again. The beast charged the ground, shaking under its weight, its jaws wide. The boy leapt aside, barely escaping the crushing bite, dust rising around in the crowd, gasped the chief's eyes narrowed as he watched the boy move not with strength but with speed and with will. The boy grabbed a burning branch from the edge of the fire, its flames licking his skin, the heat biting his arm. He swung it at the beast. The flames struck its face, and it roared in pain, thrashing and clawing at the air. The crowd cried louder, some cheering, some screaming. The chief, raising his staff again, calling for silence, but none came. The beast turned back, its eyes filled with fury. It lunged again, and this time the boy fell to the ground, the branch torn from his hand, the beast's claws scraping his side, blood staining the dust, his breath leaving him in gasps. He crawled back, his body trembling, yet his eyes never leaving the monster. The crowd leaned forward, voices clashing in the air, some calling for the kill, some urging him to rise. The chief, standing unmoving like stone, his face unreadable, the girl screaming his name, though her voice broke with pain. The boy looked around, his mind racing. He saw the fires burning high. He saw the smoke rising thick. He saw the stones slick with ash. He knew he could not match the beast in strength. He had to use the world around him. He pushed himself to his feet, grabbing a rock sharp at the edge, his hand bleeding as he held it. He circled the fire, letting the smoke cover him, letting the beast lose his scent. The monster growled, its head swinging back and forth, its nose flaring, searching for him, its claws scraping the stone. The boy moved low and fast, his heart beating like the drums above his ears, ringing with every sound. He leapt from the smoke, striking the beast across the eye, the rock cutting deep, blood spraying into the dust. The beast roared with fury, its tail whipping and striking the boy across the chest, sending him flying to the ground, pain exploding through his ribs. The crowd cried out again, the chief's hand tightening on his staff, the girl's tears falling as she watched him struggle to rise. The boy gasped, pulling himself up, his vision blurred, his body heavy, yet his spirit stronger than the pain. He picked up another branch, its end burning with fire, and thrust it at the beast's mouth, the flames searing its tongue. The beast shrieked, rearing back, shaking its head. The crowd thundered, the noise shaking the very air. The chief raised his staff, once more demanding silence, his eyes locked on the boy. The beast staggered, yet it did not fall. It swung again, knocking the boy to his knees, its jaws opening wide above him, the shadow of death covering him. The crowd fell into a hush, waiting for the end. The girl cried out with all the voice she had left her plea, rising above the silence, calling for him not to give and calling for him to live. The boy pushed against the ground, his arms trembling. He looked up into the jaws of the beast, his mind clear, his heart filled with fire. He shoved the burning branch deep into its mouth, the flames bursting inside its throat. The beast roared, shaking the ground, thrashing in agony. Yet in its rage, it struck him down once more, its massive body pressing him into the dust, its teeth snapping inches from his face. The crowd gasped, the chief leaned forward, the girl screamed his name. The boy struggled under the weight of the monster, his breath gone, his strength fading, yet still his hands pushed, still his eyes burned with will. The beast pressed harder, its jaws dripping with blood, its breath like fire against his skin. The boy knew he had nothing left, no weapon, no strength, only his will. He looked into the eyes of the beast and did not yield. The crowd held its breath, the chief's staff raised high, the girl's voice breaking with one final cry. The boy pinned to the ground, the beast ready to strike, the trial not yet ended. And the fate of the human hung by a single breath in the fire and the smoke and the roar of the beast as the dawn rose higher over the alien sky. The beast pressed down heavy upon the boy, its claws digging into the dust, its jaws hanging above his throat, the hot breath of the monster filling the air with the smell of blood and fire. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the end, some eyes hungry for it, some hearts breaking at the sight. The girl screamed his name, though her voice cracked with pain, her tears shining in the firelight, her body too weak to move, but her spirit burning as strong as the drums that shook the village. The boy's chest ached, his ribs felt like stone breaking under the weight. His arms shook as he tried to push back, his hands slick with dirt and blood. Yet even as the beast pressed harder, even as its eyes glowed with hunger, the boy did not give, and he remembered the moment he had found the girl alone and broken in the wilds. He remembered her silver eyes filled with fear and hope. He remembered the roar of the beast in the night and the choice he made to stand. Between them, he whispered to himself, "Again, though no one heard, because she needed me." The beast lunged its teeth, sinking close to his face, but the boy twisted his arm and shoved the burning branch deeper into its mouth. The flames burst again, the smoke rising thick. The beast roared in fury, its body thrashing above him, the ground shaking under its rage. The boy rolled to the side, escaping the crushing jaws for a moment, his body bruised, his breath ragged, his spirit still unbroken. The crowd roared with shock, some shouting that the beast must kill him, others shouting that he must be spared. The chief stood silent, his staff tight in his hand, his eyes watching not with anger alone, but with something deeper, though hidden behind the mask of stone. The beast turned again, smoke pouring from its mouth, blood dripping from its tongue, its roar echoing into the sky. It leapt once more, striking the boy down again, the weight of its body pressing him into the earth. The crowd screamed for the final blow, yet in that moment the boy's eyes did not hold fear. Instead, they held something else, something strange and powerful: mercy. The boy did not strike, he did not reach for stone or fire, though both lay close to his hand. He pressed his arms against the beast's chest, pushing not to kill, but to live, and in that push there was no hate, there was no hunger for death, there was only the will to endure and to show that even against fury there could be another path. The beast snarled, its jaws dripping, its body shaking, yet in the eyes of the monster there was a flicker, a moment of pause, a breath in which death did not fall. The crowd grew silent, whispers breaking through their ranks as they watched the human boy not kill, but choose another way. The alien girl staggered to her feet, her body weak, yet her will unbroken. She stumbled into the ring, her arms outstretched, her voice rising though hoarse. She cried out for her father. She cried that the boy had saved her. She cried that he had spared the beast when he could have killed it. Her words fell like fire into the silence of the tribe, her voice cutting through the drums and the smoke and the fear. The chief's eyes narrowed, his staff struck the ground, sparks rising high. The people gasped, the guard stepped forward, but the girl stood in front of the boy, her arms wide, her body trembling, but her eyes filled with defiance. She said the human must not die. She said the human must be judged not by fear, but by truth. She said he was more than an outsider, he was a protector. The chief stepped into the ring, his shadow falling across them, both the beast still growling, though weakened, the boy kneeling with blood on his chest, the girl standing with fire in her eyes, the crowd silent. As the chief raised his staff high once more, the flames around them leapt higher, the air thick with heat and smoke, the fate of the boy hanging on a single breath. The chief looked at his daughter, his eyes softening for a moment, then hardening again. He looked at the boy, who met his gaze with no fear, with no anger, only with steady fire. He looked at the beast that had been spared when death was within reach, and he spoke, his voice deep and heavy. He said the trial was not yet finished. He said one choice remained. The boy's head rose, his chest heavy with breath, his hands trembling, yet steady, his ears filled with the sound of the drums, his heart filled with silence. The chief's words rang in him like thunder. The choice would not be his alone, but it would be made before them all. The crowd began to shout again, voices clashing like waves, some calling for death, some calling for mercy. The flames crackled, the beast growled, the girl clung to the boy, her tears falling like rain, her voice breaking as she begged her father once more. The chief lifted his staff, the light of the morning sun striking the crystal at its head, fire dancing upon its edge. His voice rose above them, all commanding silence. The tribe fell still, the beast crouched, the girl shivered, the boy waited. The chief spoke. He said that the boy had proven courage. He said that the boy had shown strength, not of body alone, but of spirit. He said that no outsider had done such before, and yet he said the law was strong and could not be broken without cost. The crowd leaned forward, every ear straining, every heart pounding. The boy knelt, his eyes still locked with the chief's. The girl whispered father again and again until her voice was gone. The beast growled low and restless, its eyes fixed on the boy who had spared it. The chief lowered his staff slowly, his face carved with storm, his words falling heavy. The boy had faced fire, the boy had faced beast, the boy had faced death, and had chosen not only to survive, but to spare, and in that choice there was something that no law could bind and no tradition could crush. The chief's staff struck the ground. Once more the fire roared high. The tribe cried out, some with joy, some with rage, some with awe. The chief raised his hand, his voice cutting through them all, and he said one last decision remained. The boy raised his head, higher his heart, steady his breath, sharp. The girl clung to him. The beast growled, the tribe held its breath. The chief's eyes burned with judgment, and with something else afire that could destroy or save the fate of the human, not yet sealed the dawn above burning brighter as the drums thundered on. And the choice of mercy hung in the air like a blade sharp and waiting as the tribe stood frozen between death and life, between law and change, between the end of one story and the beginning of another. The flames rose higher as dawn spread across the alien sky. The tribe stood in silence, their voices swallowed by the weight of the moment. The boy knelt in the dust, his chest torn, his body broken. Yet his eyes steady. The girl stood by his side, her arms wrapped around him, her silver eyes shining with tears and fire. The beast crouched low, its breath heavy, its body scarred, its gaze fixed upon the human who had spared its life. The chief stood tall, his staff raised high, his face carved with shadow and light. The drums pounded slow like the heartbeat of the world. The crowd leaned forward, every eye fixed on the chief, every breath waiting for his words. The fire crackled, the smoke rose, the beast growled, the boy's chest heaved. The girl whispered, "Father," again. Though her voice was faint, her spirit burned bright. The chief's eyes moved between them all, between the boy, the girl, and the beast, his mind a storm, his heart a battle. The law was clear. Outsiders had no place within their tribe, no right to touch the sacred, no right to face the beast and live. Yet what the boy had done could not be denied. He had stood against death with empty hands. He had saved the girl when none else had been there. He had spared the beast when every voice screamed for blood. He had shown not only courage, but mercy, a mercy rare even among his own people. The chief lifted his staff higher, the light of the sun striking the crystal at its tip, the firelight dancing across the faces of his tribe. His voice thundered across the circle. He declared that the trial had ended. He declared that the boy had proven himself beyond measure. He declared that the spirits of fire and beast had witnessed his will, and yet he declared that the law of the tribe still called for judgment, and that judgment would now be given. The crowd stirred. Some shouted for death, some shouted for mercy, some shouted with confusion. The chief raised his hand, and silence fell again. The beast roared, shaking the ground. The girl clutched the boy tighter, her tears falling into the dust. The boy lifted his head, meeting the chief's eyes. Without fear, his voice raw but steady, he said again, "Because she needed me," and those words cut deeper than any blade. The chief's hand trembled, though none could see it. His eyes burned with fury, and with pain his staff shook as he lowered it to the ground. The crowd gasped. The beast lowered its head. The girl held her breath. The boy remained still. The chief spoke again, his words heavy with power. He said, "The human lives," he said, "the human has earned a place among them." He said, "From this day, he is not outsider, but brother." The crowd erupted, half with joy, half with rage, voices clashing like thunder across the sky. The chief struck his staff and demanded silence, his gaze sweeping across them, his voice iron. He said the law was strong, but stronger still was truth, and the truth was before their eyes. The boy had given his blood for the girl. The boy had faced the beast. The boy had spared when he could have slain, and in mercy there was strength greater than death. The beast growled low, but did not strike. It stepped back, its eyes still fixed upon the boy, as if it knew the choice that had been made, as if it bowed in its own way to the spirit of the human who had stood against it and spared it. The girl fell to her knees beside the boy, her tears flowing, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Thank you," again. And again the boy leaned against her, his strength nearly gone, but his eyes still burning with fire. The tribe began to murmur, the weight of the decision heavy upon them. Some bowed their heads in acceptance, some turned in anger, some stared at the boy with awe, and with fear. The chief stood unmoving, his staff planted in the earth, his eyes fixed on the dawn, the sun rising higher, the fire burning brighter, the choice now made and the path forever changed. The boy tried to stand, his legs weak, his body trembling, yet he pushed himself up. The girl helped him. The crowd watched in silence as he faced them again. Though broken and scarred, his head was high, his spirit unbroken. He had faced fire, he had faced beast, he had faced death, and now he faced the tribe itself, not as an enemy, but as one of them. The chief stepped forward, his hand heavy upon the boy's shoulder, his voice carrying across the crowd. He said, "This human has given us a lesson." He said, "Strength is not only in the hand, but in the heart." He said, "Mercy is not weakness, but power." He said, "The tribe will remember this day, not as the breaking of law, but as the birth of a new path." The people bowed their heads, those some with reluctance, some with all the firelight, painting their faces with shadow and flame. The beast let out a final roar, echoing into the sky before retreating into the shadows of the cavern, its growl fading into silence. The crowd exhaled as one the drums fell quiet, the air heavy yet alive, the dawn bright across the sky. The boy breathed deep, his chest aching, his arms he's shaking, yet his spirit rising higher than the flames around him. The girl leaned against him, her smile weak but bright, her eyes filled with hope, her voice soft but strong. She said, "You are not alone now." Her words like light cutting through the smoke. The boy's eyes softened, his lips whispered back, though his voice nearly gone. He said, "And neither are you." The chief raised his staff one final time, his voice thundered. He said, "The trial is ended. The human is one of us." The tribe roared again, this time with more unity. Though still divided, yet the choice was sealed. The law had bent, but not broken. The truth had spoken louder than fear. The boy stood scarred, marked forever by the bite of the beast, yet stronger than before. The girl at his side, her hand in his, the tribe before him, some in awe, some in doubt. The chief above them, staff raised high, the fire burning bright, the dawn shining stronger. The decision made, the story sealed. And as the drums began again, slow and steady, the boy felt the weight of the world upon his shoulders, and yet also the strength of something greater. He was no longer only human. He was now a bridge between worlds, between mercy and strength, between life and death, between what had been and what could be. And so the deadly decision became not an end, but a beginning, the beginning of a new path for the tribe, for the girl, for the beast, and for the boy who had chosen to stand when all else fell, who had chosen mercy when death was easy, who had chosen to live not only for himself, but for another.